Hello guys, this is Abdurrahman Gilal, and today I will be trying my best to explain you software requirement engineering. It's not a pretty straightforward topic that we can cover in a short presentation. However, I will try my best to give you an overview then how does requirement engineering look like in in general, and I will try my best to give you the best examples or the best practices that happen to be in requirement engineering these days. So I have chosen to use Somerville's PowerPoint slides from the book Software Engineering. It's a 10th edition. You may take any edition that you like to do, but I have seen that the common practices that have been using in industry these days are basically, all covered in this chapter. It's not going to be too explanatory about each of the phases and each of the steps that how these things have, got existence and how these things are basically being practically used somewhere. But however, you will at least get some understanding that how these things look like. So, without a further delay, I would just start with the definition of requirement engineering. Once again, as we discussed last time, any engineering process is basically a way by which we are trying to quantify, all the things that in order to repeat some things later in the future. So we know that engineering is kind of a discipline that makes us, organized. So this is the same thing that if we are applying into requirement engineering, so it actually will help us to process of establishing the services that a customer requires from a system and the constraint under which it operates and it's developed. So from its definition, it is quite telling me a complete process, which is trying to tell me that how it starts and how it ends. So usually, if I divide this definition, then I would be saying that there will be two parts of requirement engineering. So requirement engineering is a process by which we can develop the set of requirements and manage the set of requirements. So I always go with these two things because requirements engineering is just not concerned with the development, but as well as the management of them. Because once you develop something, then how you actually look further to manage in case there is something to change, in case there's something to monitor. So this all comes under the category of requirements engineering. So Somerville has got very well explained it, but I may have a way by which I would be extending it. And yes, Somerville has also discussed it in a detail and has kept a part of requirements engineering. So we both on the same page. So so let's go further and see like what is a requirement in terms of definition. So, but it's the same thing that if we consider that the requirement is a piece of desire that a person may want, or it may be a basis for a bid for a contract, or it's a kind of a statement that a person will ask so that we can let the function happen. For instance, I can say to Siri, play the music. So Siri will be playing a music for me. So that particular thing, then I am giving a statement to Siri to do something for me. So this looks pretty straightforward if we see generalized things, but it's not as straightforward as it appears. So when I say Siri to do something, it's not gonna happen exactly in a way that I say. So there will be a lot of things behind the scene that Siri will be accessing into the system. So my words are basically just some statements or a statement, and behind the scene there is a system. There are constraints that are working together to make it happen. Exactly in the same way, if we are developing a system that we want. System to do something for us, then how we will be actually looking, a system to be acting. So the system is not done yet. System is not developed yet, and we all know that system has every even if I follow any type of process model, let's still be having a requirement, elicitation or engineering as a first phase, and then design, and then development, and then, testing, and then implementation. So this all can happen all together, right? So let's say right here, when I do not have any system developed, so how am I going to actually make sure that things that are said by the users, or who else can say, let's say, so anybody who is actually going to interact with the system can be a user to the system. So how will we make sure that that has actually achieved? So this is something that is not an easy and straightforward job. Once again, I say, so when I say a requirement, it's a high level abstract statement. So it may be a service or any part of the system that a user may want or a stakeholder may want. So the question can come, who can actually instruct us, who can be our partner in this process. So we call them stakeholders, right? So when I say like stakeholders, I am basically trying to say anybody who has some stakes in the system. So it could be anybody. I'm going to explain it shortly, but let's say first this has come in my on the slide, so I better explain this. Like, so like user requirement, system requirement. So when a user is saying vague statements or abstract statement in natural language, how actually we're going to make them happen. So let's say in a Facebook, I may say that I want to find users, or I want to find my friends. Let's say this is just in a statement that anybody can post, right? So, but is it going to happen in this way? How does Facebook actually going to make it happen? So it's also possible that Facebook is going to actually give us some certain further system requirements by which we actually trying to say that the system has to give an access to user to find based on name, based on location, based on how to say family structure. So this may be one of the system things, right? And also possible that a system may give potential suggestions to a user if he wants to find a friend, right? So these days this is like the system makes us know that, okay, this people you may know. So this Facebook terms like people you may know can be a system requirement, right? The user is just wanting to add friends. Like a user is saying that I want to be able to easily find and connect to my with my friends and family members. So it's just a requirement from user, but system has to make sure that a user can find the members by the names, by locations, by workplaces and other criteria they may come. And also the system may let them see their mutual friends so that they can actually access to the mutual friend list, and they can eventually find out their list. So you see just one user requirement, and there can be several system requirements. So this is the same thing that Somerville trying to say that natural statements or plus diagrams or service, the system provides the operational constraints, so written for the customers. And system requirements are a structured document setting out detailed descriptions. So as I said, I wanted to find my friends. So how am I going to find my friends? So there will be more than one requirement. So if you go further into the definition, so Somerville has given an example of man care system. So the simple thing is that man care system should generate a monthly report, so showing cost of drugs prescribed by each clinic during that month. So this 1 month is like some straightforward statement given by the user. So how it's actually going to be implemented. So the system has to follow certain other steps. For instance, that one on the last working day of each month, a summary of the drug, for instance, the system shall generate the report for printing after 17:30. So means like they set up the time duration. Also, they set up the how to say like prescription details, such as maybe 20, 10 grams, 20 milligrams, etc. And cost reports shall be restricted to authorized users. So, like you have to make sure that the system does all these things to achieve this. So this looks very straightforward from the user perspective, but that's not straightforward in terms of development. So I hope it makes sense that user may pass any requirements that I want to have this, but you as an expert, system expert, have to identify that how we can make sure that the system will be doing it to achieve the goal for the user. So, so now the question is, I was just saying that who may actually, read the requirement. So I would better, instead of saying reading the requirement, I would be saying then who will be the stakeholder for the system. So, the stakeholder, any person or organization or part of the system, there are small, shared, businesses where one system or one small business entity wants to actually participate in your business, another part of the system. So this they may also consider to be a unit of organization who is affected by the system. So it either be direct use or it be investment, such as like sometimes government does not have anything to do what you do on your system. So end user is the person who is using it. For instance, like I am using the system, Facebook, so it's end user, I am the end user. The system managers and system owners, like those who manage the system, those who invest in the system, they are they can be managers as well as the owners. But on the same time, like the government is involved because government sees that a lot of people are doing business in there. So are we following all the regularities? And it's not impacting users actually to not cross the limit. So the system should be actually following what government is trying to say. So can we say some political, can we make some political debates on Facebook? So such kind of things is involving government to be part of it. Otherwise, there will be a big problem later on in the future if we do not involve the government. So such kind of users will be also very important for us, like stakeholders in terms of, from external side. So it does not directly involve, government, but there could be a government body or any subsidiary from the government side. So it could be something else. Environmental people can come. So some doctors can come. Some investor can also be part of it later on. I'm not sure like how, but so this can be a huge hierarchy. So I like the way Somerville has actually summarized them. So it's like from the developer's perspective, from the user perspective, from the owner perspective, from the government perspective. So I would say like this is into the category, right? So that's why like you have to make sure that when you are writing user requirements, who you should involve: the client manager, system end users, client engineers, contract managers, and system architects. So they all sit together and they collect the requirements. And then once they understood the requirement, they further go into details to how they can actually prepare a system so that they can actually be functioning for the users or for the end users or stakeholders, right? So okay, so this is just an example. I'm not gonna discuss further about this example. I would say like okay, so the big challenge that do we have the same process that we actually do in plan driven? Because requirement engineering is, per my understanding, as long as I have been seeing things, requirement engineering is something very, how to say, dedicated in plan-driven or large-scale software development, where we follow, process models such as, waterfall models. But if we are working on small software development or medium software scale development, there like where we do not actually bring in the experts from requirements, so they do not actually follow all the steps that we are discussing or will be discussing here. But they have the processes, but do they actually follow exactly one step by step? That could be a big question right at the moment. Because, for instance, if I say what is the manifesto of agile software development, So agile software system says individuals and interaction over process and tools. So they consider individuals or interactions more than process and tools. And they focus more on working software instead of comprehensive documentation. So now if they work if the agile focuses more on working software instead of comprehensive documentation, then all the phases that we trying to involve the stakeholders from all the parties will be kind of a big challenge for us at the moment. So customer collaboration is always encouraged in Agile, where contract negotiation is something part of the plan driven, which is, for instance, waterfall model. So, Agile says, I can accommodate change at any time, and waterfall or plan driven says we'll have to follow the plan. So these are some certain manifestos. The priorities are different here. So now how, are we actually going to do everything same in how to say in requirement engineering for agile or requirement engineering for plan driven? So it's gonna be a little bit of twist. So I'm not sure how, but sometimes when there are a lot of researchers who are saying that if somebody is even using waterfall process model, they still can use certain agile processes or processes or practices to overcome the issues that are happening to be in waterfall or plan driven. For instance, that planning scale in the waterfall is long, very long, but in agile it's very short. So how actually we can make sure that the short and long can work together? So that's where you can bring in maybe prototype development, or you brought in certain things from the agile to make it adaptive, so that you can actually overcome the issues that are basically generated by the waterfall model. So we can discuss, as so many things about that, but just let's say, so these steps may be part of for surely they are part of the plan driven, but in agile development maybe their focus could be different. As Somerville says that system requirement is a waste of time as requirement change quickly. So that's one of the biggest challenge, and that how you're going to handle it. Because if you actually trying to detail every process and a user is sitting next to you, so better you just ask and do things with the user. So that's one of the things that is basically a big challenge for people who are trying to implement the requirement engineering, complete requirement engineering process over the agile. But as I told you that we can still merge both of them, right? So, so a requirement document is therefore always out of date. That's why, of course, agile methods usually use incremental requirement engineering. It makes per requirement as a user stories. Yes, because they were close to users, so they believe the user requirement, such as a structure, like I always say, as a user. So you give a as for instance user what you want. I want, for instance, let's say I would say I want to do what, so that I can achieve what. So these three questions you ask from the user, and then based on them you start trying to prepare the system requirements, and you can finally achieve it. But that's not pretty straightforward at every places. Sometimes when you even do not even know that how system will be looking like. So you have to go and you have to interviewing people, you have to, ask more details to identify as much as possible as a requirement. So there will be so many other stuff that we cannot directly. So this could be one of the ways by which you can do for sure, but this is not always a good practice, to achieve the requirement if the system is large scale system. So, okay, so that's pretty straightforward. So agile methods and requirements are not the same, right? Sorry, agile methods and requirements in plan driven are not the same. So agile versus plan driven, right? So let's say functional and non-functional. Yes, once we consider requirement collection, so from the word we can see like functional that have unit of functionality of the system works. For instance, I always say, let's say if I continue the example of Facebook, so what could be the Facebook functional requirement like finding friends. This could be one of the requirement like chatting is another requirement like posting photos or videos, it's up to you, is all goes as a uh, functional requirement. So there can be many, right? How about non-functional requirement? I would say it's a quality requirements, so quality attributes such as speed, such as security, such as safety. So many other things can come here, and they will make these all requirements a factor. For example, how quickly you can find a friend. This is what I will say a non-functional requirement. So chat, like how secure is your chat? So how private are your, how to say your photos and videos? So this is how I would categorize that. The two big categories of the requirement. It's not done yet because there is another straightforward requirement that is sometimes called constraint. Like I told you, like domain constraint as well as the operational constraint. So there can be so many. So we just discussed about this. So constraints, yeah. Once again, I must tell you, for instance, I've got a system constraint. I've got a some like operational constraint, a way that I'm working software, I'm making software for hospitals. So that software will have to follow what are the specific requirements coming from the hospital. Are they following any standards or are they having any specific regulatories? So that considered to be the domains, not a function and non-functional requirement, but they are the domain requirements. And sometimes the government comes, they put constraints on like what could be the general policy for the data protection. So once again, there you go. Then you have to consider those all things right here in this type of requirements. Okay, so let's say so we already discussed the functionality of the system. This could be one of the things that we have to know. So we have to sit with the user so we can straightforward, like how to say, we can ask users to start telling us that what you want. So let's say sometimes we bring in like this. I want to log into the system. So this is my one of the use case requirements, so my functional requirement I want to do. I want to chat with my friends and I wanted to upload my photos. So upload my photos. So this could be the like system. Okay, so how about another stakeholder? I wanted the system admin or admin simple. So admin can actually, manage the database or something. So this could be another user. So this way we can also sometimes identify the functional requirements, right? I hope it makes some sense. If you got any question, you are always welcome. You're not supposed to wait for a long time. You may leave me a comment. I'll try my best to explain you. So this is just an example given by the, Somerville about demand care. So requirement imprecision, such as requirement completeness, requirement correctness, requirement, these things are always the big challenge that you cannot be precise in requirement because as long as user is interacting with the system, you will not be sure that what problem can come. So the best practice is that what people do, what actually software developer do is to develop a system, a small prototype, and then show to the users, and then user interact with the system and they say I like it or I don't like it. If you remember our previous presentation, we discussed about the software process prototype process model where this could be fit in here so that we can extend set of requirements further well. So okay, so completeness is consistency is also a big challenge in the requirement. And then, these are certain non-functional requirements like product requirements, organization, external. So it depends like what type of system are you actually targeting. So you have to see like so many requirements. One will be related to product, another one will be related to the organization and the external. So you have to see which system are you actually developing so that your organization as well as external requirement may get changed. So as I just mentioned, usability for the user or performance. So these things will be related to the product. Security will be related to the product. I just gave you an example of Facebook. How about the organizational requirements? So like operational requirements or development requirements, they may come for a specific, way by which Facebook is developing, what type of tools and technology, what type of protocols they follow. So these all will be part of this organizational and external requirement, as I say, ethical requirements, like regulatory requirements, like data protection requirement. And it's not straightforward. Every country is having their own way of, dealing things. So if the system is only operationalized in one country, such as in the United States, maybe change in requirements may change in United Kingdom or in France or in Egypt or Pakistan. So you have to see like these legislations are not easy. So that's gonna be a very big challenge if the system is a long like a large scale software such as Facebook. Okay, so this is the main reason that people say that non-functional requirements or 100% non-functional requirements are impossible. In fact, sometimes I am concerned that the 100% functional requirements can also be a big challenge. So it's not straightforward, once again, I say. So let's say, so this is an example, which is what you can read, but I will be just trying to quickly go and explain further. So not like this all has been discussed. So how we some can be measuring the, speed based on what, like screen refresh time, so event response time. So these can be the units of measurements if you are working on, non-functional requirements. So just imagine that in just to ensure the speed, you have to still implement so many other requirements. So it's straightforward. It's not pretty straightforward, as I say. Okay, so this could be my quickly last part of the topic today, which is like how actually we can happen this process. So like yeah, of course. So I know that this starts from an elicitation. So I wanted to collect the requirement first. So how am I gonna collect the requirement? That's a big question. So am I gonna just simply give one sort of thing? So yeah, and it's not like that. So it depends the software that you are making and how efficient is the software. If software is familiarized to the people, for instance, you're working on a chat box, so many people already know, so it's easy for you to just collect the requirements from users. But it's a system that you're going to develop is a new system, such as you're working on any specific space shuttle or something which is not familiar to many people or their engineers. So how will be the experience of that ship, which nobody has ever sat in and nobody has ever flew? So how you going to make sure that the requirements are collected correctly? So there you go. So you have to have different ways by which you can actually identify that possible requirement that can come on the way, and then you can make sure that your success can, successful requirement set can be developed. So, for instance, that if I am saying elicitation, which means now I am trying to talk about collection of the requirements. So, how actually I am going to collect? So, it could be using interviews or like means one-on-one conversations with stakeholders. So this is also very important. Who can be your stakeholder? So this is, as I told you, user. So you have to identify what type of user, what role be of the user. Like for example, I am as the end user. So there can be a user like admin user. There can be another type of user like super admin user. So you have to see everybody and then you have to collect their requirements. So it's gonna be one-on-one interviews, like possible. Or you make a survey and you let the people just do the survey. It's also possible. So, and then you have a focus group. So you have a small group of stakeholders. So you do not want to miss any specific requirements. So you brought experts, people on particular group, and then you start interviewing them. It's also possible like a focus group, or you let them do some work and then you started observing their way of doing things. This is the kind of things that actually you wanted to go into their work environment to gather the information. So the observation could be one of the things, and prototyping could also be another thing that we just discussed, right? So yeah, so I was just saying, like, interview can be one of the elicitation ways, surveys, focus group, observation, prototyping. So these can be the possible ways by which one can actually, identify the elicitate the requirements. So once you have all the requirement, that's now a big position for us to see, like, okay, now I got all set of requirements. So what am I going to do now? This the second step comes here that we have to start doing now analysis of them. So it's like, so you should sit together. So you should start doing some, you know, some understanding of what you collected from requirements. So you sit together and you may have a meeting with experts of requirements. So they may resolve the conflicts of the requirements. So maybe possibility is there that two of the requirements from the same group are actually saying different things for the same specific task. So analysis part is actually going to help us to avoid the conflict, and then we give some priorities to the requirements, or we make some matrices that can help us to actually prioritize the requirement. So there are going to be so many other things that this phase will happen. So we can do this all by simply, sitting together and by discussing, and then we can identify. So final set of requirements. So once the final set of requirement is ready, then how actually we are going to, present it to further, you know, discussion. So usually, requirement, analysis, once it's all done in, elicitation, so they go for the specification. So specification, sometimes requirement specification or requirement specification documents, the SRD, which I'm going to discuss in the next presentation. But at the time being, you're going to say, like, once you have this all done, then you will be actually coming here and discussing. So analysis and elicitation all together. And then we go further into the specification and how we actually going to communicate the requirements. So we have to bring in a form that we can explain them nicely. So it is a way by which we are actually, documenting the requirements. So specification, which means now we are going to document the requirement. So once we document the requirement, then that's the way by which we can go further for the validation. So how we can actually document the requirements, so we can bring the user stories, or we can make the use cases, or we can there actually present some so some, I'm gonna just simply write for you. So I can bring use cases here, and I can bring user stories here, and I can also bring some, how to say, a function, state of functional and state of functional, and the non-functional requirement and non-functional requirement. So, I also can bring up here some UML diagrams to visualize like how it looks like. So when I'm saying use cases, basically I can use UML diagrams such as class diagram or activity diagram. I can bring all those things in this use case. And also sometimes we can prioritization. We also can, and discuss about the time and so many other things in this, or the developer, roles into this document. So this looks pretty straightforward, but it's also a big job. So once it's done, then we go further for the requirement validation. So requirement validation is sometimes called the requirement verification and validation. So once we verify from the users, like or from the stakeholders, is this you want? So I'm gonna say, like, let's say, so instead of saying requirement validation, we can say verification and validation and validation. So how are we going to do that? So verification is just the way by which we ask them, is it what you want? Is it what you want? Is it what you want? So we just make sure from the stakeholder, is it what you want? And validation, is this how you want it? Is this how you want it? you want it. So this is my explanation of validation. So of course, when you say, is this how you want it? So definitely you have to make sure that you will be developing something. So here you can do the prototype. Sometimes design can help you to, get the validation as well, but verification, validation can go side by side. So that's why if you remember the V model, so V model is going to be very helpful at this situation. And the last phase is called requirement management. So the requirement management is to actually is going to bring it so many things, such as like here I am going to say like, okay, I wanted the traceability of my requirements once I have my requirement set done. So how people are going to actually develop, or how people are actually, or developers are actually making it. So this is going to traceability. So I say this, what are you developing? So it could be like make sure that there's a link of requirements to the design and test artifacts, and establishing a change control a control board to approve and manage the changes. So it's one of the things. So once we have the requirement, possibility. So I was saying more like here, you also sometimes do the requirement prioritization. So some people use a technique called Moscow, such as must have, should have, could have, won't have kind of thing. So Kano analysis or cost benefit analysis. So many things can be part of this requirement management. So if I simply say that this requirement management can be part of it may include communication of the requirement, communication, traceability, traceability, and can also go for the prioritization. So it depends like how prioritization is, runtime prioritization is happening, and then you wanted to make sure that the one requirement that we prioritize at one level, now it's going to change. So how are we going to do that? So as I told you that Moscow, it's a kind of a technique, and we also can go for the Kano analysis, or some other techniques can be used here for the prioritization. So I think that's all for today. And I'll try my best to come again to explain further about requirement specification document. There I will be explaining that how these particular methods or techniques can be helpful, or also try my best to give you an example of the tools which we can use for all these activities of requirement engineering. If you got any question, please do not hesitate to drop me a comment. Thank you so much, guys. Bye bye.